Well, there's been a recognition by all the major parties that in order to unlock the potential of the city regions, it's necessary to actually devolve power to them. Because the problem is London is obviously a very successful economy, but in order to actually promote growth, we need to have growth outside of London. And the city regions are the engines for growth, and that's been generally recognised. And devolution is a means of actually ensuring that growth is realised, and unlocking that potential is very important.
Some of the key powers that will be devolved to, in particular, combined authorities in city regions will see a focus on major transport projects and strategic planning. The main city region that has made a pact with the government is Manchester and the wider area around it, and they've secured a deal for devolution of powers. I think what we're going to see is the Leeds city region and South Yorkshire seeing similar arrangements for devolution of powers, but in particular placing those powers with the combined authorities in those areas.
The combined authorities were set up for a specific purpose, which was basically transport and economic development. There's a recognition that they can have other powers, but those are the main drivers. So what the legal issue is bolting on other powers to the combined authorities to allow them to actually cover all of the bases, if you like. So there's a recognition again amongst the sort of, if you like, the lead authorities in this area, which at the moment are Manchester, Leeds and Sheffield, that there'll need to be legislation to actually give them the powers to do that, to actually increase their powers. There's a political issue because, particularly in my specialist area of planning, there's a lot of sensitivity about allowing planning powers to be performed outside of local authority areas. There's also there are political issues that need to be resolved in terms of there's got to be a democratic accountability of these bodies. So all those sorts of issues need to be dealt with. There's also an issue at the moment because this is all coming along at a time when there's massive pressure on public sector funding. So the only way of actually delivering this agenda is for what we called in Leeds and what we call in Leeds civic enterprise. And what civic enterprise is basically a genuine public-private sector approach to generating wealth from cities, and the private sector and the public sector recognising the skill sets of each of the sectors and actually harnessing those and driving the growth. Well, there's two aspects of planning. There's policy planning and there's development management planning. Policy planning only works basically if you are planning for what are sensible economic areas. So a housing area will have its own area. An employment area will have its own economic area as well. And the problem is that some authorities will want more housing in their areas. Other authorities won't want more housing in their areas, in simple terms, taking housing as an example. And one of the key focuses for a combined authority is going to be, and the city region authority is going to be delivering housing. So the issue is how you actually allocate housing across a city region in a way that local politicians will accept and buy into. And that was always a problem with the regional strategies, in that they weren't accepted by the numbers of housing required for each district wasn't generally accepted by all of the authorities. So it's actually finding a way of developing a consensus between all of the authorities within a city region and ensuring that that housing is delivered and they accept the levels of housing that are allocated to them.
I think the devolution of powers will release funding streams to help deliver major infrastructure projects to better connect the city regions, and also we'll see funding going into and being administered by the combined authority, going into mass transport systems like metro. The Leeds city region and the combined authority in Leeds has already announced that their proposals are to extend the existing arrangements for mass transport, introducing a metro system that will network out into the wider city region, bringing the whole city region closer together, which will then connect with projects like HS2, which will have a landing point in Leeds. Our involvement in transport infrastructure within the city regions is very important. Firstly, with the proposals for HS2, the combined authorities are considering ways in which they can better connect the city regions to London and to each other. We've been involved in advising the combined authority with projects like Leeds Station Southern Entrance, which is a new railway entrance to the station in Leeds, which will connect into the landing point of HS2. So the work that we're doing at the moment is directly linked to the national infrastructure projects that are happening and is a really important part of better connecting the city regions.
We also have good links with key stakeholders in all of the city regions, both private and public sector. And one of the roles we've traditionally played, the strategic roles we've played in deals and in projects, is to bring the public and the private sector together and almost act as a bridge between the public and the private sector to allow each to understand the pressures that they both face.